appeared to me as to how, just from the level of discussion and the level of questions, I was just my observation, disappointed with the level of scrutiny, especially with the pieces that seem to be the most out of whack, based on the benchmarking, and I'm still puzzled too, and I guess disappointed that, and I think this just needs to change. I don't think we can keep doing it this way. That I think somehow the Finance Committee has to have a much more central role in this process. Earlier, that everybody puts their numbers together, they do their cell job, they make their best presentation, and then that seems like more of a neutral party that would be in a position to decide whether budgets are in line or not. And I just don't understand. I know, talking to Brad, that they could use some more members, and that's something that ought to happen, that people ought to volunteer for that committee too. I just don't think we can just say, look, we did a pretty good job this year, we came out, we're going to survive another year. I think we really need to look carefully at how we can do this a lot better, and get that process started a lot earlier, as I thought was going to happen this year. So that comment along those lines. And just to correct something, Mr. Callaghan, you've said several times tonight that the school enrollment went up something like 17 last year. I have no idea where you're getting that number from.
I got it from the transcript, September 12th, 2002.
Well, I've got something.
The numbers in 2001 were 2,549. The numbers in September 2002 were 2,566. And Mr. Torres does not make mistakes.
With all due respect to Mr. Torres, I've also got something in my hand that says that the numbers official October 1, 02 was 2562, and that October 1 was 2671 for an increase of 109, which seems to be more in line to me. And the projection for next year is another 100 increase or so. Other points have been well made, but again, I would just say in terms of pain levels, if we're going to try to assume it somehow, we're looking at the eight people that are in fact going to be losing jobs and not there in the school system, as well as I would add in the 4 teachers that ought to be added, to maintain certain service levels. With 100 increased students, you would expect normally an increase of something like 4 teachers. So just if we're measuring levels of pain, I would say you're probably looking at the equivalent of something like 12 positions that ought to be there just to maintain this year's levels of service, which some would argue, perhaps which are low to begin with, as far as what we spend and services that we provide. So we may want to just do some homework here and see where the numbers are, but I think lately it's more accurate to portray school increases as more on the line of about 100 students a year. I don't have all my future projections. I didn't bring that with me tonight, but just to set that straight. Thanks.
Just a couple of comments. The level of discussion on the part of the board related to the budget was different because of the liaison process, and whether or not the board continues that process, or whether they continue that process and then enhance it. And several board members commented to me that we didn't have those same levels of discussion. So from the public's perception, if you're watching, in the past we would go line by line by line by line, but that wasn't done with the full board this year, because the individual liaison did it with the department head. Where in the past, the department head would come in and go through every single line with every single board member, the liaison took on that role and came in with a recommendation. So it was a different process, and I can understand how it was, perceived by others to be radically different. It certainly wasn't perfect. I certainly wish we had started earlier. I certainly wish the state would give us a budget on a timely basis, so that it doesn't distract and detract from other initiatives. We spent the first part of the summer, implementing the implications of the failure of the override, only to finish that and then enter into, what do we do with the changes in state funding now that they've finished the budget. Then we get to October town meeting and so forth. You're right, it's awful. And yeah, I mean, you won't hear me say July, but it never starts.
To getting better. Something's got to change.
I don't disagree. And if I could figure out how to change that, I would. In terms of the finance committee, I would encourage anyone in the community if you want to understand and learn how a community works, that's the place to learn. And I spent many years on the finance committee in Stoneham, and several of them as chair, and it was an unforgettable experience. And it was also difficult times. It was negative $900,000 free cash. It took 3 years to work out of that hole. And that was a very painstaking and difficult process. And I get concerns that we get too close to the edge of going there ourselves. I mean, you miss a revenue number, and we can get in trouble pretty quick. So, and that's what happened to them. It's difficult to come out of the worse than level funding of the school department was at times school department cut. And that was in the early years of ed reform, which made it even more difficult. So it is a very painstaking process. Mr. Callaghan.
When you said something has to change, what has changed here is state aid has been cut. I mean, that's what happened last year, and then it wasn't cut as much as we had originally anticipated. And right now, we're working off of another cut in state aid. I mean, the revenues of town with new growth revenues is actually up from where it was a year ago. But the increase in healthcare, increase now in salaries, in contractual obligations, and you get a cut in state aid, this is where we're headed. I mean, there's no other way around it. The only way around it is an override. It's as simple as that, really. I mean, if you need more money, you have to ask taxpayers for more money. State the case and hope they agree with you. But in terms of what we have to be able to appropriate, that's a finite number. And frankly, right now, we really don't know what the state aid is going to be. Could be even cut more than what we cut in this budget right here tonight.
It doesn't get worse than this.
Right. It could.
And if it does, we'll deal with it accordingly. That may be a difficult process as well. I think just to follow on to Mr. Callaghan's comment, and I say this every year, I mean, Prop 2.5. Everything else stays equal. Revenues only rise 2.5%. Raise your health care 17%, raise other costs. That's it. How are you going to do it?